Hi and welcome back. In this part of our video series on terrain editing, we're going to talk about how to place props on the terrain. In this case, we're going to take a few little buildings and we're going to place them along the terrain. So before we get started, let's do some simple sculpting and flatten out a little bit of area here on this hill. We're also going to add another terrain material. So first I'm going to add a terrain material called cement. And I'm going to specify a base map from our standard textures that come with the terrain demo. Now going back to the terrain editor panel, I'm going to choose our flatten tool. I'm also going to drag the paintbrush tool for painting materials. So I'm going to flatten out an area and paint our concrete texture at the same time. So I'm going to choose our cement texture. I'm going to go flatten portions of the terrain. I kind of messed up a little bit, so I need to go back and smooth that out. I also need to go back and put some more sand here, so that looks a little silly to have concrete up on that hill. So let's go back and use our material painting tool, choose our sand, and click a little sand here on our hill. That's a little bit better. Now to place some buildings, we're going to go and click the button called Add Art Assets as Templates. And basically this is a shortcut for creating a new entity template from an art asset or a Gamebryo NIF file. So click that button and then we're going to choose our building medium NIF file. Now let's double click our building medium NIF file and we'll place a building on our terrain. Notice we can't see our building, but we did add our building. Let's click the Move to Terrain button so our building snaps to the terrain. Now let's just adjust our building and place it on the terrain. Note, I accidentally selected the terrain when I moved. So again, make sure your building is selected. Let's move our building and place it where we want it to be. In fact, it might be easier to change to top view to do this. So let's go to our top view and change our rendering mode to standard. Let's go ahead and make that large. Now let's drag our building. Make a copy of our building. And let's place a couple buildings on our little concrete pad. Now let's change back to perspective. And look at our buildings that we placed on the terrain. Note, again, we can move buildings or move objects on the terrain where we need to place them. And if we want them to snap back to the terrain, we can click the button called Move to Terrain. In addition, you can also enable Snap to Surface. And what Snap to Surface will do is keep the building attached to the terrain as you move it around. Once Snap to Surface is enabled, you can also enable Align to Surface. And this will allow objects to align to the terrain as you move them around. So as you can see, as I drag along this slope, you can see the object matching the alignment or the normal of the terrain at that point. So let's go ahead and disable those two features and look at our buildings. And that's basically all there is to it. Object placement along the terrain is very straightforward and very seamless. Objects can move around the terrain and be attached and snapped to the terrain, and align to the terrain as well.